Okay, so this is probably a short video. Um, so what I started doing was researching how to harden or better secure that Bastion host. Last time we basically just spun up an instance of, I think it was Ubuntu 18, and then just put it behind a security group, right? And I was thinking about the host itself, right? And long story short, it turns out that Amazon has a quick start that pretty much is, I guess it's kind of their de facto way of recommending how to create those Bastion hosts. And we're going to basically switch over to that. So the first thing I did, just so you know, I went into the config of Terraform and ripped out the Bastion host section. So I ripped it all out, right? And instead, I come here to AWS QuickStarts, and I can just type in just normally I'm loath to do this to kind of use off-the-shelf things, but this is done by Amazon itself. And I started to do it myself, and then I realized it was a lot of work to secure it properly, and I've deferred to essentially this. So basically, this quick start basically gives you the ability to spin up, and we'll talk about the key features of it. Um, well, we'll go through it in a minute, but it gives you the ability just to spin it up and relatively easily have a secure Bastion host. It's probably also good to understand what features that they're giving, right? So I'm going to skim the features, and then I'm going to walk you through how I built it. I used their template, and then we'll just observe some things around it. Okay, so one of the things here is, if I can figure out. Yeah, here it is, this section. This section, the architecture. Essentially what they're going to do is replicate what we did last time, which is they'll create a security group in a public subnet. They'll put your, which pretty much has the same permissions as what we had done previously, right? And it will also put your Bastion host there. It does add an auto-scaling group to allow you to spin up more than one Bastion host, and then across multiple subnets. So that's one thing that we did not do previously. And then most of the other stuff is on the host itself. And I'm going to cover, if you roll down here, they have some best practices on Bastion hosts. And let's see. I guess this is, well, most of the stuff here is basically the security group stuff. Now, let me pause the video for a second, because there's a particularly interesting section about the Bastion host itself that I'm going to find that. Give me a second. So, long story short, I couldn't find the list that I was thinking of, but the two items that that kind of caught my eye that are covered in their deployment guide. So this is the same document I was looking at here. They had this concept of, one was, creating a banner, right? That when people secure shell in without credentials, that they basically represent them with a banner saying, "Hey, you don't have access." So that was one feature that I was like, okay, I probably should figure out how to do that. And the second one, which was a little bit more complicated, they have a whole section on logging, and we'll look at this a little bit later how it works. But basically, logging basically what commands are being run in the host, and then storing it, not only storing it locally, but also storing it in CloudWatch. So you can now have an audit trail of all the commands that were written or executed on the host. And long story short, trying to do this on your own, it's doable, but it took a fair amount of work to do, and I decided that it wasn't worth my time, and it was better just to use their deployment. So essentially, the deployment looks like, I've already deployed it, but I'm gonna just go to the same point. I'll show you. Basically, you go to this step one, you have your account ready. I can't even remember what you do. Basically, you just got to pick a region. And in this case, we already have a subnet, right? And we already have a key pair, right? And so you go to launch stack, you say quick start for existing VPC. It starts up a CloudFormation template. Do need to change your, it always defaults to Oregon when you do this, so you have to switch this to your region, right, in question. and there's your the templates there. You can look at the template if you want to troubleshoot it yourself. And then you name your stack. You pick your VPC subnets. There's not too many choices, and you basically hit next, and then you're done, and it spins up, and you have your Bastion host. Now, the only other thing I did on top of, once I have my Bastion host, so in this case, actually, you can already see that I already had run this earlier, and I have it's called Linux Bastion, right? And so the main things here are you'll get in your VPC, you'll get a new security group. You'll get an auto-scaling group. So this is one thing at a time. Security group, you get this security group called Linux Bastion right here, right? And then you get an EC2 instance that's running from an auto-scaling group. So let's go to EC2. EC2. And so now I have 4 running instances, right? The 3 which are my private instances, and then I have the Linux Bastion, right? And it's in that security group. And then this is actually being built of an auto-scaling group, so you get an auto-scaling group down here somewhere too. Auto-scaling group, and you'll see an auto-scaling group here. That's basically, I'm only set to 1, right? And that's about it. Now, there's a couple things about using it. When I log into it, so let's go back to it. It also gives you a static IP address too. So you see this elastic IP? So it's going to give you also a permanent IP address that you can then use going forward. So let me copy this, and I'll just show you one last feature. So again, this is all. You could have done a lot of this yourself, but the logging thing was a little bit difficult, so I decided this is by AWS. It's easier just to use their stuff. So if I secure shell to Ubuntu, I used Ubuntu as mine. You can choose your operating system too with this template. Paste, and I didn't have to provide my key in my PEM file because I already used that agent business, right? So ls. I'm just going to run a couple of ls commands, and then who am I? Which is probably Ubuntu, right? Okay, so what I did there was I just ran some commands, and I wanted to see what it looked like from CloudWatch. Can I actually see me running those commands? So if you go to CloudWatch, so let's do that. If you look at CloudWatch, you will notice that under logs, there's a new log group. And where is it? Oh, it's just not scrolling. Okay. Here it is. And yeah, down here, here's my ls command, and who am I down here, right? So the idea here is you can see this logging. I just pretty much caught what I just did. That's about it. So of course the only last thing I did, just so you know, is I then go back to here. I grabbed the VPC ID of the security group, or not VPC ID, the security group ID of the whatever the security groups here that I created, right? So it's one of these, the security group ID, and then I went into because I did want to protect my private subnet, so that I can only port 20 was only allowed in on the security group for that like private subnet, right? I wanted to protect it based on security group. So if that means I went into my Terraform to-dos or us app, see if I can find it quickly enough. In here, you will notice that I went in, and the machine is behaving slowly. Actually, it's right here. Good. So in my EC2 here, right, in main, I had a web bastion security group. I mean, a security rule for it. And so I'm allowing port 22 in, and then I pass this down as a variable. So it's var Bastion security group ID. So it's a variable I define as a base variable here, right? And then I pass it down the chain. So here's Bastion group ID hard coded in. Then I pass the variables. Then I pass it down to the module, and then I consume it in the module. So that was the only other thing I did back in my Terraform config to kind of integrate back in with the Bastion that was created by CloudFormation, essentially. Okay, that's it.